Allegheny County meeting on Thursday, March 19th. Please stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Walt, could you please take a roll call?
Yes. Frank DeCristofaro. Here. Sarah Innamorato.
Here.
Kimberly Joyce.
Here.
Jennifer Liptak.
Here.
Sarah Roca.
Here.
Amy Weiss Clements.
Here.
President Brustlers.
Here. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
We do not.
In terms of President's updates, on earlier today, the working group on plan funding and modernization met with our consultant, Sarah Emmons, and Acrisure. I'd also like to point out that it is Sunshine Week, and this board, starting in 2024, provides video recordings of all of our meetings, transcripts. We put together bylaws and have started providing additional documents online as of a couple years ago. We will have a presentation about 20 to 25 minutes from our consultant for the working group, Sarah Emmons from SME Consultant. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Board President and members of the board. It's really an honor to be here today. And thank you also for the opportunity to work on this important topic. I know how critical it is to you all as board members, to the county as an employer, and most importantly to the employees and retirees who are part of the system. So I take this work very seriously. I thought I was going to get to present on a screen, so I have some cool animations that you won't get to see. But if you flip to number 2 on your slides, I just wanted to start with a quick overview of the working group. As you can see on the left, the working group was convened by Treasurer Brusselars and includes members of this board, and thank you all for serving in both roles. There are also other members of this working group who are part of it due to their role in county government or their knowledge of county fiscal matters. On the right, you'll see some people who are in this room who have also been very helpful as part of this process. This is like my Oscar Academy Award speech. But I'd like to thank Walt Zemansky, Retirement System Director, Brian Gabriel, Solicitor, Mariner Institutional, and Acrisure for their work in supporting this role and the transparency with which they provided me with data and analysis. There are also outside experts that have been very helpful here who are listed. The only one that I'll mention by name because I'm going to use their charts is the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, or NASRA. They have provided some bespoke analysis that we will kind of walk through today. And then on the bottom there, you can kind of see the timeline. So the working group was convened in late 2024. I was hired in October 2025. We've met 6 times through this morning, as the treasurer mentioned, and we'll have about 4 more meetings until I come back in June with a final report. And at that time, I will be talking to you again and happy to take questions about the work we're doing. So if you flip to the next slide, actually you can go to number 4 because I didn't get to flip from blue to orange, so just go to the orange one. This is the outline of my presentation today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time starting where I started as a consultant, really trying to understand the nature of the county's pension funding problem. The county has a $1.4 billion unfunded liability, and the first part of my work was really understanding where that problem came from. There were kind of 3 points that I'm going to talk about as we go through this part. First, that pension debt has been growing since 2004, so it is not a Great Recession problem, predates the Great Recession. And in fact, actions taken before that point when the plan was overfunded or over 100% funded permanently altered the trajectory of plan funding. And which, of course, as you know, never recovered after the Great Recession. In the interest of time, I'll kind of skip over these next 3 boxes, but we'll be coming back to them. So if you flip to slide 5, I'm going to start with walking through the past 25 years, not in detail. I'm going to start with an overview of the past 25 years. But before I talk through the history, I want to note something really important, which is that this exercise was not intended to point fingers or point to any one single action or event or inaction that caused the situation that the pension fund is in today, because in fact that would be impossible. Pension funding is impacted by market performance, by employer actions, by employee behaviors, assumption changes, statutory authorizing environment, and exogenous events. So I have to kind of give that fine print before I start. So if you look on the left here, you'll see a chart that shows the actuarial funding ratio. So this is the ratio of assets to promised benefits starting in 2000 when the plan was 106% funded. This is also not necessarily a desirable position to be in. Being overfunded has its own set of problems. And then you can see the funding kind of drops through 2009 when it really fell off the cliff during the Great Recession. And then today it's at 40% funded. On the right, you'll see a chart showing the numbers behind that ratio. So the light blue is showing the actuarial liability, which continues to grow to today, what's at $2.4 billion. And the bottom line, not really moving up at all, just a little bit, is the value of assets, which is at $950 million. So that $1.4 billion gap is the challenge that we're solving for as part of this process. So on the next slide, you'll see a timeline, and again, don't worry, I won't walk through this in detail, but it does kind of highlight the number of events and actions and decisions that really are behind the state of funding today. During this time period from 1999, when the plan was 110% funded, to 2025, there were 3 recessions. Those are noted in the gray bars. There were 2 national emergencies, 9/11 and COVID, both of which arguably impacted employee behavior for a time period after that. There were 3 pieces of legislation. There were 4 cost of living adjustments, so those are denoted by the purple arrows, only one of which coincided with the contribution increase. There were managerial changes at the county level that impacted behavior, and there were 10 contribution increases. Those are the green stars. Purple? Okay, purple arrows. 10 contribution increases following 1 decrease. So back to 1999, Act 85 removed the cap on pensionable compensation, which was followed shortly thereafter by a contribution decrease that was temporary until 2000. So just to kind of illustrate the nature of the impacts on plan funding, that's the intention of this chart. On the next slide, you'll see one of the interesting kind of aspects of this history project was to look back through actuarial reports. So this chart shows plan assets in blue and future contributions in red, so plan funding. And the present value of future benefits is the green line. So in 2008, the projection for 2024 was that the plan would have $2 billion in liabilities and about $1.96 billion in assets, so just about fully funded. If you flip to the next page, you can see the same chart the following year after the Great Recession. So again, the 2024 projection at that time was $2 billion in liabilities and only $800 million in assets. So the liabilities did not change, but the rug was really pulled out from underneath the asset side of the equation. And where the fund actually was in 2024 was about $2.1 billion in liabilities and $940 million in assets. So very close to a perfectly accurate prediction from the actuaries. Of course, that's not really true. There's a lot of other things that kind of happened in the meantime. It's probably more of a coincidence than anything, but certainly there were signs that the plan was headed for challenges. And in fact, what's not shown here is something that was in the following year's 2010 actuarial report, which recommended that the contribution rate be increased to 10% and 10%. That contribution rate did not reach 10% and 10% until 2019, so 9 years after the actuary recommended it. So if you flip to the next slide, number 9, what is behind the growth in unfunded liability? So this chart was put together by a gentleman named Alex Brown from NASRA, the State Retirement Administrators. NASRA administers a public plans database that has hundreds of plans in it and put together this analysis of Allegheny County in particular. The request was, how is Allegheny County different from other plans? So on this chart, the growth in unfunded liability since fiscal year 2009, so after the Great Recession, has been $970 million. Of that amount, the far right column shows assumptions. So of that amount, $375 million is due to assumption changes. That sounds like a lot, but it's actually very common for plans to have that portion of their unfunded liability be due to assumption changes. So for example, this board admirably took the step of reducing the return rate assumption from 7.75% to 7%. That is a reporting, that's an assumption change that has an impact on the reporting of the liability. liability. Doesn't mean the liability is actually bigger, it just means your expectation of it is more accurate. So this column you can kind of disregard because this is like an actuary thing, no offense to the board president. The middle column shows that contributions were the cause of $296 million of the liability, and this is where things start to deviate from what plans typically look like. So what this is basically saying is that since 2009, if the county had wanted the unfunded liability not to grow, they would have needed to contribute $296 million more during this time period. I have a chart that kind of shows what that looks like over time in a couple of slides. This is very uncommon because most plans after the Great Recession, and we'll talk about this later, made benefit changes as the county did during the Great Recession, but they also started contributing more to their plans, and that's something that has not really happened with the county. The other column that is unusual is the experience column, and that's about a third of the liability as well. And this would be things like investments not performing at the expected level of return. So you all know this because you did take the step to reduce that return rate assumption for all the years that investments were not performing at that level. This would be behind that number. It also would include things like people retiring with compensation that is higher than expected. So employee behavior might be included in this as well. And the plan design column is very, very small. In a typical plan, this would be actually negative and would show that the liability has been reduced by benefit changes, and that's not the case in the county. So we're going to talk a little bit about the contribution side, although please know that the research that I'm doing looks at everything holistically. We're just going to talk about contributions for a few minutes. So the county contribution, there's two types. This is an oversimplification, but there are two types of contribution structures to public pension plans. One is a fixed contribution, such as the county has, where the percentage is established and fixed in law or policy. And the other is an actuarial required contribution. And the definition of that is, Brad Rigby could correct me, but it's basically what is the amount necessary to put into the fund every year so that you pay off the debt within a certain time period. So until 2013, so this chart shows 1998 to 2013, the ARC for the county, for the retirement system, was published. And what this chart is showing is the light blue is the employer contribution, that's that fixed percentage of whatever it was at the time, and then the dark blue is the ARC, so how much the county should have been putting in, or the employer should have been putting in, should the goal have been to fully fund the plan within 20 years. Now again, I'm not saying that the county didn't do what was required in law, it's just according to this measure there is a gap, and it obviously gets very, very large after the Great Recession. We don't have the time period after 2013 because in 2014, the Government Accounting Standards Board changed the requirements for reporting and no longer required the reporting of an ARC. And so if I may, the first recommendation, and the only one I have at this point, is that I think the ARC should be published again by this board so that you have that number in front of people, because it is actuarially sound and it's a very common metric in public pensions. If you flip to the next slide, we don't have the ARC anymore, but this blue line picks up in 2014 from where the previous chart left off. What we can calculate is the net amortization cost, which sounds wonky, and it kind of is, but basically that big red column that said contributions and how they contributed to the unfunded liability, that's this spread over time. This is basically how much more should the employer have been putting in each year just to keep the liability from growing. So you can see back in 2014, that amount was about $7 million more. Up to today, 2024, that amount was about $34 million more. So this, again, continues to grow with every year that the contribution rate doesn't fluctuate due to the unfunded liability. All right, so that's sort of the overview of the flyover of how we got where we are today. And the other question that we've been spending some time researching is, how is the county's plan different from other plans? How is it similar to, and how is it different to? So there's 3 points I want to make here today, and the first is that the county plan is, this is actually a similarity to pension plans. The county plan is a mature plan, and in mature plans, the inactive employees, the retirees, are growing faster than employees. But where the county's plan is deviating from the typical plan or the norm is that a fixed contribution rate is is usually paired with other flexibilities or with dedicated revenues to really meet that funding target. The plan is also outside of the norm in terms of contribution rates and plan design, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. On the next slide, this is a chart showing the ratio of active workers to retirees at a national scale for state and local public pensions. I can't take credit for this. This is from the Equitable Institute. But on the left, you'll see active workers, and it stays kind of relatively stagnant. And on the right, you'll see that the number of retirees is really growing pretty precipitously from 2001 to 2024. So as in the county, public pension plans in the United States are facing several strains that are causing fiscal pressures. One is the aging population as the baby boomers move out of the workforce and into the retirement age. One is longer life expectancy, which is obviously a good problem to have, but it means that people are receiving their benefits for longer than they used to. And the other is a relatively flat workforce. And this is a broad national trend that reflects not only fiscal pressures at the state and local levels, but also just the changing nature of government work. So nationally, the number of retirees exceeded the number of workers in 2012. On the next page, you'll see the county has not yet reached that point. This is actually as of 2023, so I don't know what the 2024 numbers are, but you can see that the number of inactives or retired members of the plan is shown in dark blue below, and the number of active or employee members of the plan is shown in light blue. These lines are converging, and they will definitely converge soon. And what this means is that your benefit payments are accelerating much more quickly than your contribution rates. This is a trend that started to happen around 2012. So that's how the county plan is kind of similar to plans and the macro level trends that they're experiencing, but there are a couple of ways that the county is different. So the contribution structure, again, as required by law, this is not set at the board level or the county level, is atypical. And we know this because of at least two expert researchers, Center for Retirement Research at Boston College and the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, both of who have written extensively about flexibilities that are usually built into contribution rates that are fixed. It's very unusual. In fact, it might be unique to have it required to be matched as well. Typically, the employer side of the match can fluctuate and increase, and typically benefits can be reduced or removed temporarily. If you'll flip to the next slide, you'll see that the county employer, now we're talking about the county's rate, the contributions are lower than most. So the county's employer rate is 11%. The median plan or the median rate is 15%. I come from the West Coast, and I was very familiar with the Oregon pension system, and they're at about 30% for their employers, state and local. So this is definitely a lower than typical contribution rate. And on the next slide, slide 17, you'll see that on the other side, the county employee contributions are very high compared to most pension plans. They're almost twice the median. So the median is 6.2%, and the county's contribution of 11% is almost twice that of the typical plan. How am I doing for time, Walt?
Yes.
Go ahead. On the next slide, we're going to talk about another somewhat wonky concept, which is the normal cost. And the normal cost, I need to edit the first sentence on here, it's terrible, but the normal cost is really the current cost of future benefits for employees. So this is usually expressed as a percent of payroll, just like the contribution rate, or in this chart it is. And so the chart here is showing the dark blue is the employee's rate as a percent of payroll, and the light blue is showing the normal cost as a percent of payroll. And you can see back in 2001 and up until 2015, the county paid some portion of the current employee's pension cost. And we know that because the employee's contribution rate was lower than the normal cost, so lower than the cost of their benefits. From 2015 to 2023, what we're seeing is that employees' contribution rates are higher than the cost of their benefits. This is in aggregate, which means that the employees were actually paying down just a portion of the unfunded liability. In 2024, which is another data point I forgot to update on this slide, employees are just about paying for their own pensions. And that is actually atypical of public pension plans. Typically, employees are receiving some contribution from their employers. On the next slide, just a little bit more on the normal cost. I'd like to note that normal costs are not the same across employee types, and this is something that the actuary is actually digging into for the working group, so we'll have some analysis of that when I come back in a couple of months. On this chart shows national data, so this is not, again, not the county, but on the left you'll see the normal cost for non-police and fire, and on the right you'll see the normal cost for police and fire benefits. And basically, the cost of public safety, uniform employees, is usually higher, not necessarily because of the amount of benefits they receive, although that is partially the case in the story of the county, but usually it's because they can retire earlier, so they receive benefits for a longer time. So it is unusual for an employee contribution rate to be the same between uniform and non-uniform employees, just because of the cost of the benefit. So those are just a few of the ways that the county plan is a little different than the universal public pension plans. And now we're going to talk very briefly about what has been done to date to address the problems. And I know this is not a comprehensive list, but I will have a detailed timeline in the final report. So we'll talk just briefly about Act 125 and whether and how it has improved funding status. And we'll talk about some of the actions that this board has taken to improve investment management, reduce risk, and improve liquidity, as well as fitting for Sunshine Week efforts to improve transparency. So on slide 21, we'll be looking at talking about Act 125. And again, these charts here are showing national data on state and local public pension plans. So like many plans, this is the chart on the left that's called Figure 7. There were benefit reductions for new hires implemented after the Great Recession. This is Act 125 of 2014. I highlighted the kinds of benefit changes that the county made during this time, and you can see the county was not alone in making these changes. The difference between, I think I mentioned this earlier, but the difference between the county and the other pension plans that made these changes is that those pension plans also started to contribute more as of their ARC as a group, which the county did not do. In Figure 8 on the right, the percentage of state and local government workforce hired after 2014, this is really intended to show why we don't see the impact of Act 125 yet in our plan. Might be baked into the actuarial assumptions and along with a whole bunch of other stuff that Brad could explain. But basically, nationally, about 50% of the state and local government workforce was hired before 2014, and that's the case for the county as well. So that pre-Act 125 group is retiring out of the system, but they still make up about half of the county's workforce. On the next slide, slide 22, just wanted to note some of the admirable steps that this board has taken to improve investment management, from streamlining the investment management operation by reducing the number of consultants, reducing the number of managers, moving away from private investments, implementing policies to improve manager accountability, and increasing transparency. These are all admirable actions that are necessary. Some of them might even hopefully reduce fees and save money, but of course they will not on their own fully fund the plan. So there will be a chapter of the report that talks about some of these changes and where there might be more work to do or where there might be considerations, but the bulk of the work that I am doing is really solving the financial problem. And so that's where we are today. On slide 23, where can we go from here? We're taking an everything on the table approach to explore options for improvement. So I've talked a lot about contribution rates, but please know that I'm looking at plan design and everything else with the help of the experts that are giving their time. And I'm developing an evaluation criteria. And we'll also have a couple of case studies in the report as well. And all of this is helping us determine what's the best path forward for the fund. On slide 24, you can see some of the questions that I'm asking. You can see as I've moved from the actual work I've done, I have less charts and more graphics and icons. But these are the questions that are very important that we're asking right now. About the overall amount of pensionable compensation. Are there opportunities to align benefits with cost, with being more in alignment with typical plans? What outside funding options are available to supplement employer contributions, since we know that will need to be a part of the solution? Does the plan's contribution policy need to be adjusted? Spoiler alert, I believe it does. And are there ways to improve risk sharing sharing or other things that are not financial. So fairness and cost sharing among employee groups, especially with new hires and the younger generation that we know just cares about and different things. They care about different things. They leave work with more frequency. How are we thinking about them as the plan looks ahead? And then finally, on slide 25, I have some draft evaluation criteria. Funding and the fiscal impact will obviously be at the top of the list in terms of how I'm thinking about the options that are going to be in the report, but there are other aspects that also require evaluation, and those will be considered as well. So that is my update, and I'm happy to take questions. Okay.
We have a couple minutes for questions if there's any questions from the board.
I just want to say thank you. This was super helpful. I can't claim the new kid on the block anymore, but I've only been on the board for 2 years, and so this history lesson was great.
Great. I'm glad it was helpful.
Thank you so much. Next, we get into glamorous board approvals. We have, or do you want to read them all? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll take it. A motion to approve the board meeting minutes from the February 19th, 2026 board meeting.
Make that motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? The motion passes.
Next item is a motion to accept the financial statements, which include the pension fund assets, the statement of changes in plan net assets, and the RBAC balance sheet for January of 2026.
Make that motion.
Second?
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? The motion passes.
Okay, next item is applications, and this will be a motion to approve the following 2026 March applications. There are 10 early voluntary, 10 full retirements, 2 recalculations, and 1 payment plan.
Motion?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? The motion passes. Director reports.
Thank you very much. If you turn to the Director Report tab in your board books, I'll highlight some areas on the dashboard before we get into approvals. Retiree payroll is up 4.61% as compared to last year. Contributions are up 3.7%. The number of refunds are up 12.37%. Life insurance paid claims are up 15.38%. If you look down, you'll see as our software reports active payees and deferred vested for a total of 12,830 members currently. If you turn to the next page, total retirements are up 15%, and pension estimates are climbing nicely, which shows that a lot of employees are using the online pension calculator, so we're happy to see that. There was only one capital call as of the prior board meeting for $110,054, and that was the iNetworks Opportunity Fund 2. The office budget is listed there as of February 28th, 2026, and are there any questions on any of the dashboard items? No? Okay. So next is our board approvals. All of this was in the, with the exception of one, was in the February board book as a draft. So the first will be a motion to approve the election notice and timeline for the 2026 board member election.
Motion?
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion passes.
Thank you. The next motion is a motion to approve the RFP for medical examination services. This contract is currently held by Phase 14.
Motion?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? I have a couple typographical items that I'll give you afterwards, but
Okay.
nothing substantive. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion passes.
Next item is a motion to approve the RFP for financial wellness services. This contract is currently held by Duncan Financial.
Motion?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? I also have a couple small editorials on this one that I'll give you.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion passes.
Next item is a motion to approve the acceptance and vote on Appeal 2026-1, in which the board, having received and reviewed a report and recommendation, vote on whether to approve and adopt the proposed findings, conclusions, and recommendations of the hearing officer, thereby denying the appeal.
Motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion passes.
All right, so next items are board updates. Beginning next month, we're going to start the rollout on the retiree portal for all current retired members. Currently, anyone who retired as of December 2025 has already received in their packets every month they go out their information to log on. We also used the Allegheny County Retirees Association, were very helpful as a test group for us last year, so they're all on currently. So we're going to start doing roughly 500 a quarter. Well, depends upon how much, because the way we're doing it for security reasons, we're mailing them a blanketed letter, and they're going to call us for their login information, so that way nothing's going out in the mail. So if it flows smoothly, we'll start increasing it, but our hope is by roughly the end of 2027 to have everybody on the online portal. And anybody can call in too, if like a friend asks and they want their information too. And then also, we're going to be visiting the District Attorney's Investigation Unit on April 8th. Myself and 2 staff, along with Duncan Financials, will go out there to present and answer any questions on retirement.
Any questions for Walt? Thank you so
very much.
Next, we have Brian Gabriel, our solicitor.
Thank you, Erica. The solicitor's report is dated March 13. There is one update since that date, and this is under the category or number 5, which begins at the bottom of page 5. That's the district attorney's litigation. We had a conference with the judge this past Monday, which has changed the schedule a little bit. This had been scheduled for a non-jury proceeding in April. That is now instead a briefing schedule where the parties are going to submit briefs in mid-April for the district attorney and at the end of May for the county and for the retirement board. And this part of the case pertains only to the threshold issue of what the statute requires or does not require. And the judge has, as explained in earlier reports, has decided to focus on that initially rather than getting on to anything else before doing so. And so that's the one update since the report. There are 2 action items which are first up in the report under new matters. They're both class action items. The first one, I just wanted to mention, it's described at the beginning of the bottom of page 1 over to page 2. It's one of our new class action counsels, and it is a request for authorization for a Section 220 books and records demand, but not more than that. So this is not a request to initiate litigation outside of the demand under Section 220. And so with that, I'd ask Walt to.
So that's a motion to authorize Bleachmere, Fawney, and Auld to pursue a Section 220 books and records inspection of the United Homes Group Incorporated under Delaware law to examine internal documents and report back to the board upon the conclusion of that process after the execution of the retainer agreement, so providing.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? The motion passes.
The next item, also under class action, is the Supermicro Computer, Inc. Case that is under, at page 3, it's under section 1B of this month's report. This is a matter where the board had previously authorized the books and records demand at the end of 2024. Our class action counsel had recently, I think last month, I reported to the board, they had made a request for authorization. At that time, it was not recommended because they had not met the criteria and the guidelines. Since then, they have come back with more information, with updated information that does satisfy the criteria from our review. There's an attachment to the solicitor's report. And so with that, there was a recommendation to, along with a recommendation to pursue this class action.
So that would be a motion to authorize Grant Eisenhofer to file a shareholders derivative action against Supermicro Computer, Inc. in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California and to seek lead or co-lead plaintiff against the execution of a standard retainer agreement.
Thank you.
Motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion passes. Thank you, Brian. Go ahead.
I have no other items to bring to the board's attention, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Look like we're question-free. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have our consultants from Mariner Institutional, Chris Brokaw. And are you coming up solo?
Yes.
Okay, he's coming up solo.
So just a quick comment, really related to action that the board took at the last meeting, rebalancing the portfolio. The funds from the high yield have been raised. They're in the process of going to the core, federated core broad fixed income portfolio. That moves the portfolio towards the target allocation and also reduces a bit of risk in the portfolio. And the second item is we continue to use the international equity as the source of funds for any liquidity needs in the portfolio. So coordinating with Walt when cash is required, and this month $5 million was required, $5 million from Bailey Gifford International Equity was liquidated to fund the ongoing benefit payments. So just a brief update on those few items. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you. No questions.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
And in the final position is Acrisure is sending up Amanda Volk. She's also accompanied in the audience by Brad Rigby and Todd Kordecki. Welcome, actuary. Where's your, put your sign out. Yeah, put your sign out. Looks good. 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. We knew it was a full agenda, so we kept ours brief. If you turn to the Acrisure tab in your meeting packets, we always start off with going through the trustees' goals, ensuring that these are up to date. I would say the biggest ones that we are concentrating on are for the fund to remain insolvent, as well as in the short term, really trying to limit contribution increases. And then we do have reached $1 billion in assets. We just noticed the financial, it did hit there as of 1/31. I would say congratulations, but we all know what the market has done in the past month or so. So we will keep that on the list for now. If you flip to page 4, this is all we have prepared for you today. We just wanted to give you an update on the insolvency projection based on the most recent assets that we had received, which is December 31st, 2025. At the prior meeting, we had assets through September 30th, 2025. So the graph up top is the more recent assets for December. Below is what you saw previously. Just walking through these, the left is the market value of assets of what we believe the fund would be at, given all assumptions are met, and the contribution rates below are the current contribution rate at 11%, which is the blue line, and then the updated contribution rate that we have at 14.5%. We basically every time just look at what the contribution rate would be from a blanket perspective for the fund to remain solvent based on the most recent assets, and that's what we're showing here. As you can see, comparing from September 30th to December 31st, the story remains extremely consistent. We're still projecting the fund to be insolvent as of 2043, and we are still recommending that the contribution rate would be 4.5% to stay solvent. We mainly do this just to give more of a visual and try to put more in a tangible way of how assets move, how that impacts the story of the fund. So I'll pause there, considering this is all we have prepared for you today, and I can take any questions at this time.
I think we don't have any questions.
All right.
Thank
Thank you.
Is there any new business? Seeing none, our next meeting will be held May 21st, 2026. Can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Seconded. We're calling ourselves adjourned. Have a great day.
First meeting was really good.